Hey, Michelle.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. It's back. We're back. It seems like we've been off forever.
It does. It really does. I'm a creature of habit, so I like my structure. So,
I know. It seems like,
but
the holidays, we've been
I
gone for
know
what, a month?
seems like it. It's probably been close to that because I was
Yeah.
traveling, then we had the holiday break and all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, welcome back to Business Chicks, everyone. I'm Michelle.
And I am Kim, and we are your co-host. And together we have about 60 years of combined experience in sales, marketing, customer support, all that good stuff. And so, tonight we're going to talk about something that we probably, women especially,
Mhm.
all think about every now and then, because it's so easy sometimes to feel our emotions kind of coming on, whether we can control them or not. And sometimes for various reasons, which is something I know we'll
Mhm.
talk about tonight. But
Mhm.
is crying at work ever okay, or is it totally a career killer?
So, I mean, work gets emotional. We all know that. And we've both been there. And we know everyone who's listening has too.
Yep, absolutely. And it's such a weird thing. Like, I mean, okay, so do you think it's always taboo to cry at work?
So it's so hard, but honestly, people do see it as a weakness, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, or that it's not professional.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, it's just being a human. You're just being
Right.
yourself. And in high stress jobs, which we both have had and still
Mm-hmm.
have in some ways now, at
Mm-hmm.
times,
Mm-hmm.
it it's normal. It's just a human response. So yeah, I mean, I think honestly, people would still be very detrimental in a meeting or conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and especially I don't often see men. I really haven't seen that much in my career. Women cry regularly. I've seen women get
Mhm.
teary eyed. I've seen some tears. I think more people that work for me rather than people
Mhm.
that have been, like, say, at my level. I've
Mhm.
seen it more
Mhm.
subordinates, but
Mhm.
in general, I was looking at the stats, and one of the things that was interesting is, according to the stats, 41% of women said they had cried at work more than once, and 9% of men. I don't even think I've seen 9% of men um, tear up at work. I'm trying to think if I've
Seems
ever.
high, honestly. It does seem high for men.
I mean, have you ever seen a guy cry at work?
I'm trying to think if I have, honestly, as you brought that up, and I just don't. I don't think so. I don't think I've ever seen that.
I haven't ever seen it in the context of work. Now, I've seen it if somebody's getting emotional when they're leaving, right? Like one
Mhm.
of my old bosses that left, I think right before you got to our current job, he was a real just emotions on his sleeve type of guy. And I never saw him cry during work, but like when he was leaving the company and going, to start his own company, he teared up. So I've seen that.
Mhm.
I've seen
Mhm.
emotional, and I've seen, people who were thanked get kind of emotional,
Mhm.
but I haven't ever seen a male cry in the heat of the moment. And so I
Mhm.
think that's what makes it even harder on us women, is that's one of those things that it's like a beacon, right? Like woman, woman,
Right.
woman, she's a woman, because,
Mhm.
we do tend to be, I think, in some ways, not necessarily in negative ways, we tend to be very empathetic, but we can also be
Mhm.
very just emotions on the surface. Like, I know you and I have talked about this before. My eyes tend to water when I'm frustrated or mad. And it's
Correct.
I'm almost like sometimes it's like that one, the Cars, that little, Pixar cartoon
Mhm.
where he was saying you're leaking, or,
Right. Yes. Yes.
that's what kind of I feel
Right.
like sometimes is like I get so frustrated or get so angry that I feel my eyes leaking. So it's not like
Mhm.
crying, but where it's that tendency of the eyes to water, and it's almost like you can't even help it. And
Correct.
it's strange because I don't necessarily consider that, I guess, the same as crying, but then again, I don't see men do it a lot.
Well, and the thing about that is, and I am such a when I get frustrated, I cry.
Mhm,
And when I get frustrated and I really want to control my anger,
mhm,
um, then I cry because it's all being built up, right? So, and I think that's a very common thing for females.
right.
However, to men and a lot of other women as well, if you're crying, you're crying.
Right.
No, there's no, oh, it's because you're frustrated, or it's that sort of thing. It's definitely oh, you're crying, and that's, how do you do that? Like that's the hard part, is because I'm not crying because it's not an emotion. It is emotion.
Right.
It's an emotional cry, but it's emotion because I'm frustrated.
Yeah. Right. And it's not, and that's what it's always like, the catch-22 for me is exactly what you're saying, is the only time, like I've never cried out of sadness. I mean, I have in my life, right?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
At work, I've never cried out of sadness or out of, I'm not getting my way, or or you hurt my feelings, none of those reasons. But the only times I can think of that my eyes have ever given me away is like what you're saying, is when I'm angry and I'm trying to control my anger and I'm trying to rein it in. And it's just like, it can't help it. It's
right.
the weirdest thing. But like you said, there is that conception, that idea that crying is crying. And it's when I feel like men who don't react that way see that as a weakness. And ultimately, if they knew that, whereas they might rant and rave and throw things and slam things, if they knew that it's actually a matter of control, we're actually controlling them, less uncontrollable than control, or uncontrolled than controlled. Like, and that's the reason for the crying, the eyes watering, is because we're controlling things that we don't want to have to control. We want to be able to share our temper. We want to be able to, express ourselves, but we feel like we can't. And so maybe that is kind of getting at the heart of it, is it's not that maybe we wouldn't feel the need to have our eyes watered, to have our eyes leak, if we didn't worry so much about maintaining composure, because we don't want to be seen as emotional. It's like this catch-22, right?
100%. I mean, it absolutely is. And, I mean, I've had situations where, a team member in a meeting broke down and started crying, and it actually opened up the conversation, because I realized when the tears started happening that it was almost like a stress release, right? Now, not everybody's going to feel that same way. I mean, I've been there, so I understood it. But as soon as it started happening, it gave others the ability to speak out a little bit more about what was stressing everyone out. And it really opened up conversation. But again, that's from a female leader.
Yeah.
Would that same situation have happened if it was a male leader? And again, not just trying to understand the difference and how to maneuver through those situations is really what
because that is what I'm sitting here thinking. And I guess it's kind of like an epiphany for me. A first time I've thought of it this way is, maybe I wouldn't have to worry about it if I was more honest with myself and others about what I'm feeling, because it is the holding that in that it's like my eyes are betraying me, right? They're betraying the fact that I'm trying to maintain my composure. And so maybe it's the trying so hard, right, to be composed. Absolutely. That if it wasn't so much trying, maybe it would, that would never get to that point. So it's like we're trying to be composed, and in the process are seeming uncomposed.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a completely valid point. I mean, that's exactly how I see it being.
Yeah. It's so strange. Well, this is Meredith Vieira. She used to be on The View, and she now has her own show. But she did this episode, and I just happened to come across it. And she's talking about crying. And honestly, I have 2 videos that I want us to talk about through, our hour here together. And this is one of them. But ironically, or interestingly, both of them are in the field of reporting. And the reason why I say that's ironic or interesting is that female reporters often get categorized as being unemotional, as being, very even keeled and non-dramatic, because they are serious reporters, right? They're news. And that was, what my major was in college. And while we were kind of taught, if it bleeds, it leads, get the tears on film. For other people, we were definitely taught to maintain our composure, right? Not to let our emotions show. And so it's interesting that both these videos I came across that were talking about crying at work were from in the reporting industry, or, you know, media, entertainment, but serious entertainment, like reporters and not necessarily, you know, actresses. But anyway, she talks about it, and she has a couple of males on the panel and females. So there might be a couple of times I stop through here so we don't get a copyright strike as we watch this. But I thought this was really interesting. And then the other one is from some senior reporters at the Atlantic, and the sentiments are so similar. But here we go.
To the limit at work, sometimes to the verge of tears. But is it okay to show that kind of emotion in the office? You're saying no. Well, listen, the host of an online
Did you hear that? Like literally, the whole audience was like, no,
right.
no. So I thought that was interesting. But here we go.
Kasparian says that it is. In a recent essay, she recalls a time when she was reporting on a heartbreaking story. She lost her composure on air, and initially she was very embarrassed. But after receiving positive reactions from the audience, she decided she'd never hide her emotions in the workplace again. So our audience, when I said it, immediately I heard no's coming out. What do you guys feel about
that's
this?
Excusable for sure. I mean, I love seeing emotion come out during a story like that. It just shows you that you're human. You know, every once in a while at work, if you see a coworker cry, fine. But if it's an everyday thing, no, that's
I think Lance hit the nail on the head.
I think that's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. It's like if it's once in a while, we see it as human. But if it's all the time, maybe then it's an issue. Yeah. You know, I think, and one of the things that just struck me right from the minute that I started watching this video, and you probably caught this too, is that this reporter that they're talking about, she, you know, got emotional, and she thought that she needed to come and apologize, and people actually liked it, were open to that. It felt it made her more human, which kind of goes to the point of what you were saying about the meeting, you know, where it kind of opens up the conversation, and it kind of is freeing to everyone, and everybody kind of gets that authentic moment. And it almost sounds like that's what she's saying too, is that, wait, people may not be so critical of authenticity. Okay, here we go. And then Lance, you know, saying, of course, it's once in a while, it's probably fine. If it's all the time, that might be
with the kind of workplace you work in, I think.
She was a reporter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different thing. You're reporting a story that's going to affect you emotionally. It's not like she was like some secretary tipping tables.
No, but it did. When I was a reporter in Providence, the story about Jonestown, Jim Jones and Jonestown came across, and it was breaking news. And I was literally on the air, and I had to read about all these people that were dead, including children. And I totally lost it. I mean, I didn't get hysterical, but I went to break. But I mean, if you were covering, for example, 9/11 is a great example. You would not have wanted your newscasters. They couldn't break down there. They wanted to, clearly, but you have to be to lead. Exactly. So, but I think in the corporate culture, particularly women showing emotion is never looked upon well. So,
I remember I remember I was going in for a review, and my boss gave me such a praiseworthy review, and then he told me what my increase in salary was, and I remember getting so heated and not crying out of sadness, but getting teary because of anger. I was like, and he told me, it's like, this is what we're going to do for you. This is all we can do. And I said, you just gave me the best review in my career, and this is all I'm getting. And I had to excuse myself from the meeting. I said, I need to leave. And then when I came back, probably an hour later after getting my composure, he was like, you know what, you're right. He's like, you do deserve a raise. And he's like, I'm gonna go fight for you. Because I think.
Now that I found was interesting, that it actually changed her boss's mind, because I would have thought that would have been the opposite.
And again, it comes down to the person that she's talking to, right? Like but she was able to articulate why. Right. And maybe that's part of the difference as well, right? She was able to present, here's what's happening to me, why I'm doing that, you know, that sort of thing. But then the other side of it is saying they were going to go fight for her. And again, this is not but there are some men who can't handle crying and are like, okay, I'll do whatever you want me to if you'll just stop crying. That's
a good point as well. But, you know, also, I think that's a really good point. And you saying that made me think about too, she got up and left. Right. And so that showed strength, I guess, in the moment, and not weakness, because even though I'm sure her eyes were probably watering, that's why she got up. But the fact that she removed herself from the table and then came back composed and said, here's the deal. Right. That's kind of a boss move, right?
Right, exactly.
And leave shows power, not weakness.
Well, and I mean, I think, again, it goes back to the same thing. Women's emotions get picked apart way more. And we're either too emotional, too cold, and there's no winning. So just like they're saying, right? I mean, it's the same type of thing, especially I would say as a reporter, for sure, because look at how many people are looking at you when those emotions are happening. And they're either too cold about something or they're too emotional about it. And that's a no-win situation.
Yeah, it is. And it goes back to, you remember the episode, that we filmed with Vince about the what would do versus what would men do. And he was like, y'all really think about all this stuff, And it's like, yeah, I don't think men are second guessing their emotions all the time. And that's not to blame the men, because I think women judge other women as
agree.
as the men are judging us. And in fact, maybe more, maybe they're not thinking about this stuff at all. And we women are just thinking about watching other women and going, oh, I don't want to be perceived like that. Well, maybe nobody's perceiving that woman that way other than us, other women.
Correct. True. And that's a valid point. Yes.
So I think that's kind of interesting, is that I hadn't thought about that. It's kind of like, they say, who do women dress up for? They dress up for other women because men don't even notice.
Right.
Maybe it's like, we're thinking that we're being assessed and evaluated by how we do this, how we do that, how we phrase this, how we phrase that, whether we're too emotional. And in some cases, we probably are, but maybe in some of those cases, it might be that we find ourselves doing it, maybe with ourselves, other women.
We put more pressure on ourselves than anyone else.
Yeah. So maybe that's, something for all of us women to consider. Is it really others evaluating us that way? Or are we being hard on ourselves? Right.
Right.
I think I was just so caught up in the moment. When you get caught up, I don't think I think it's okay. We're all human. We're
But
not
is there a
robots.
double standard for men and women? I don't know.
No, I think it is a double standard. And
I was angry at myself for getting emotional. I was like, God dang it, Megan, don't get emotional. Like,
but that's the thing about, and that's such a beautiful story. Megan cries all the time. So it's like, Megan, not today. Okay,
I'm crying inside for you right now.
Even now, like the tear is struggling to stay in her eye socket. It's very emotional for Megan all the time. So he probably just told her she was doing great.
It's a little double standard. Yeah. When men cry, oh, he has emotion. When women cry, like, oh, she's emotional.
Well, if a guy
I
look at him be like,
it's like sometimes when men show emotion, we're like, oh, he's
so sensitive. That's a good thing. Right.
Yeah. And then when women do the same thing, she's emotional. He's sensitive. That's a good word. He's sensitive. She's emotional. It's just I don't know if it's ever going to be any different. Honestly, I just, and maybe that's not an awful thing. Maybe if we just start giving ourselves a break, because I just don't see, we're built so different. I don't see how it's ever going to completely change. And why can't we embrace what is unique instead of trying to assimilate?
Well, I think that the reality on some of it is that because it is such a double standard, and again, this is not everything or everybody, but there is a lot that has to come in that. But it also has to start with us. Like every female has to, I think, to your point, when it gets so that we're crying or upset, it's because we're frustrated or stressed or anything like that. Just like Megan was mentioning here, is that we have to know that we can speak.
Right.
We have to be able to put that out there. We have to be able to say our truth, as people say, right? And we haven't been able to do that in the past. And some of that's been cultural, some of that's been us. You know, we've done some of it to ourselves, in all honesty. And I know I've done it to myself.
Me. I'm sitting here thinking, God, I've done that to myself a lot. Like nobody's told me, I can't speak or I can't say how I feel. It's me thinking that it makes me look a certain way, which means it's my judgment, right?
Correct. And that's, I think, those are the things that have to change, is what people are thinking and how they're handling it.
Absolutely. And it's like, I frequently do this when we have these shows, where I have these because I'm always trying to apply it to myself to make sure I can get the point across. And I'm having this epiphany of, I think a lot of the pressure I know myself and possibly others are feeling is to a certain extent self-imposed. Now, granted, from years of experience, right?
Absolutely.
So not totally to take the blame. There's reasons we feel this way. However, I think at a certain point, we just have to say, this is who I am. And if I'm in the right place, they're going to embrace that. And if they don't, then it's probably not the right place, because I'm only going to do my best work when I'm living authentically.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that the big part about this to me is, and I hope, and I try to do this in my positions as leadership and coaching and things like that, is that we have to model. We have to model the empathy and authenticity, and that makes it okay to be real and human at work. And part of the thing that I talk to my team about here and previously and all of these things is that while outside stressors will always affect you at work, I don't want to be nosy, but if you have something you want to talk about, let's understand what's going on, because I don't need to know the details. I don't need to know anything. Tell me something's going on and you're having a rough time right now, whatever. You need some leniency, you need help. You need me to help you with what's going, work wise. You need help with that. I'm on board for that. I'm all for that. We are all human. We all have lives outside of work. But until leaders start presenting that to the teams, I don't know how you break that cycle.
Fair. I mean, that's definitely fair. And I think that is exactly right. It's breaking a cycle because, I mean, remember we talked about that, about the a lot thing, right? Is the she's a lot, or, a lot, or whatever, they're a lot. There also tends to be that upside, right? The passion, the vibrancy, the assertiveness, all those things that are going to get a business places, right? Well, the same is true with emotion. And so maybe it's really recognizing that emotion is like passion, right? Emotion is what is going to make the difference. It's often what is going to push you through hard times. It's often going to be what gets you, to the next level, is that, fourth quarter drills, right? In football, that, finding that second win. So if we look at the reason, that maybe that's the key, is we need to look at the reason the emotion's coming across, instead of is someone crying? Oh, they're crying. How they're so emotional? Why? Right? If it's just because you felt like somebody was mean to you, okay, suck it up, buttercup. Right.
Right.
It's because
it depends on what that was. But yes, in general.
Right. Yeah, agreed. But if it's something like, that you feel like you're being treated unfairly, and you can, outline that and be very specific and not just emotion driven, then that's something we need to discuss. Right. So it's maybe getting, asking those probing questions, which requires communication. And like you were saying, being open and, honest with your team, and having those lines of communication open so that it can be, hey, this is why I'm feeling this way, instead of just, wondering why somebody's tearing up, because that could be a million things, right?
Right. And may not be work related, and I'm the type of person, you kind of have to be careful in that at work too, right? If you see somebody and, because I'm the type of person that if someone comes up and I'm upset about something and they ask me what's wrong or anything like that, I'm not crying until I have to talk about it.
True.
Or even if I say, no, I don't want to talk about it, because all of that comes flooding through. So, it's you have to try and read the room. You have to learn. We have to allow people to be who they are, because
I was just thinking those exact words. You took them
right. If they're great at what they do and they do a good job, they are who they are. So we have to let that be, and we have to acknowledge that for whatever that means.
Right.
And I don't mean that in a negative way. As far as, I'm not saying somebody gets to be a bully or gets to be mean or gets to do that because they do a good job. I mean, if somebody's doing a great job for you and they're, reliable and all of these things, and they're having an issue, a concern, something, they need to be able to be who they are, handle it.
Yeah. And maybe, embrace the quirks. And again, like you said, we're not talking about bullying. We're not talking about somebody who's mean or who's backstabbing. But if it's just quirkiness, right? Somebody who may talk too much, or somebody who might, be too, emotional or too empathetic or compassionate on behalf of the customers, right? I mean, I'm thinking specific people. It's like you're always, playing devil's advocate or those kind of things. Those kind of roles are valuable. And
Absolutely.
and if we all were the same, we would be missing the nuances that those kind of people bring to the table, the empathy that I might miss, because I'm not typically an emotional, like sympathetic emotional person, right? I'm emotional, but I'm not the kind of person that I don't get upset very easy. So sometimes I don't understand where something would be upsetting someone versus someone else might be,
Right.
So,
right. Well, and it's just being in that same position or understanding their position, or, I think our biggest thing that we, in all of our podcasts and all of that and everything we're doing here, is to be unapologetic. I think that's what we are trying to learn ourselves and hopefully teach others and next generations, to be unapologetic about who you are, because, unfortunately, similar to the education system, and you are fully aware of this, you can't fit, that square peg in a round hole.
Absolutely.
And that's so true in life, in workplaces. If they're doing a good job, not everybody's personality is going to be the same. Not everybody's triggers are going to be the same. Not everybody's emotions are going to be the same. So it's finding that it's okay to recognize that and to be unapologetically themselves.
Yep. Absolutely. And unfortunately, I think we've had to, how a pendulum always swings, right? And I don't mean politically, but I mean, it's like for years, I think everybody was restrained, or women were restrained, don't show emotion, don't da da da. And then I think it swung back in the opposite direction. So it made it almost just as bad, because then it was like, okay, we need to let you say whatever you want. We need to let you do whatever you want to do. And if you don't, then, you're not supportive. And I think it went so far in that direction that it was almost counterproductive, because then it was like, oh, we can't have that. Right. So then you were reinforcing the beliefs of the negative people. And then now I think it's what we're seeing is maybe that gradual swing back to somewhere around the middle, where we want to allow people to be authentic within professional bounds. And what I mean by that is what we've been talking about, right? Be authentic, but make sure you're doing it smartly. Make sure you're not abusing the system. Make sure you're coming across the way you want to come across. You're bringing your authentic self, not just every, cobweb and nook and cranny of your personality,
Sure. Well, I think Megan set up a good point in that stepping away from the situation for a minute. And that gave her the ability to come back.
Right.
Composed.
Right.
Because,
right there.
Right. Because listen, some days there is nothing better than a good cry.
Right.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Laying in bed, watching some sappy movies, crying all day. Look, been there, done that, love it. No, there is nothing wrong with a good cry. Sometimes that's what you need. I think that learning steps on how that works, how it works for the environment you're in. And that environment is different at every position, every job, every level. I feel like every age, that you are in a career, in a company, any of that situation.
And knowing who you're with in the room at the time, right? And what they're going to, again, we don't want to get into the whole, I'm thinking about how they're going to pursue, but there is a time and a place is kind of what I'm there. You need to know when it's okay, because that's kind of what I was saying about, feeling like it went the other direction is when we said, whatever you're feeling at any given moment, you should be allowed to say at work. I don't agree with that either.
No, I agree. Yeah.
I think it's that hurts you just as much as not being authentic. So I think it's knowing, like she said, I think that was a power move. I think that was a boss move. She said, I am getting emotional, so I'm going to step away and then I'll be back when I can talk about this calmly,
Right.
So I think that was a power move. And it kind of goes to, if someone is getting emotional, right? If as leaders, then maybe that's, up to us to suggest, hey, you want to take a minute,
Right.
and come back, because I don't think we should ignore it. I don't think we should just tell them to toughen up. But I think if we give them that space, like, hey, in a productive way, hey, you need to take a minute and come back, then maybe we also set the example for those around us.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And then, it's, if you feel tears, that's, take a quick break. Like to me, that's a big thing, is to try and take that break, because you're not always going to be in a situation where you can be like, you know what, I need a minute. You're not always like, I get that. And being able to take that break gives you like, what part of that triggered me? Well, and Megan's a good example for us to use in that, is that she just had this amazing review and then was like, you're a rock star, but we're only going to do this much. That's all we can do.
Right.
So we recognize it in words, but we're not compensating at that level.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you have to go, and use it as a chance for honest conversation, not something to be ashamed of. Just have that moment of either, this is why I had to step away, or listen, I need to step away for a minute because I need to compose myself. Because literally the beauty of email sometimes is that I get to step away from it.
Right. Yeah.
I've written a response to someone and I wait.
Yep.
And I just hold on for a minute and see, okay, how do I want to respond to this? How do I, am I responding professionally? Because the reality of emails is it's being read in the emotion of the person reading it, not the person sending it.
Through their lens. You're absolutely
correct. However, sometimes when I'm typing emails, it is definitely my attitude that's coming through. So I am well aware that sometimes I have to step away. And I think it should be no different in a face-to-face situation.
Right. That's a good point. I think one of the things that I've tried to start doing lately is, especially, and by lately, I mean last couple of years, but because I tend to be, that marketing dramatic, highs and lows. When I get angry, like I said, sometimes I feel my eyes leaking, and I hide myself. And one of the things that has really worked for me lately is naming it, name the boogeyman, right? Is like, hey, I feel myself getting upset, and here's what's going on with me. I feel resentful that we can't like really naming it, instead of letting them wonder, is she sad? Is she upset? Did I hurt her feelings? It's like, if you can't walk away, and like you said, sometimes you can't, right? But is mentally doing that, is mentally stepping back and say, hey, I'm feeling myself getting upset, and here's why that is. And then it's like kind of like naming the boogeyman. It takes some of that power away. And I found that will stop the watering for me, is if I actually use my words. You know how we tell kids?
Right.
Use my words, because I think what has led me to that point is that feeling powerless, that inability to say what's on my mind or to express myself. So the more I express myself, it takes some of that power away from the anger and the frustration. So that's one thing that's worked for me quite a bit.
Right. And I think that's the whole thing to me, is being able to do that and to lead by example. That's you've got to be able to show, this is how I'm handling it. And if people see you handling it that way, number one, I think it gives them the ability to show that, emotions are normal at work. We've got it. Like I said, your outside life's going to seep in. It's just part of it. There's no getting around it. Build a culture where vulnerability isn't punished. And I am terrible at being vulnerable. So I am great at supporting people who are, and I am just terrible at being vulnerable. So, but it's important, because I feel as if sometimes in our minds, we feel like we are going to get punished, in a sense for it. And maybe that's partially our generation. But the other part is, use emotional moments to connect and for growth. And the most important thing to me, though, is leaders have to make sure that their reactions are setting the example, because the reactions matter from leaders and from managers, supervisors, however it falls in that. Those matter, because you set the tone. You set the tone in your department. potentially in a company, when you're dealing interdepartmentally and these things are happening, you have to set a tone of that we're supporting each other.
For sure. And you said connection and growth, and I really like that, because I think that's kind of like what I was getting to a second ago that I feel like has changed for me, and as I've gotten older and just later in my career, is being able to name that does give us opportunities for growth. In other words, if you find yourself getting emotional, teary-eyed, whatever, that's like that should be like a road sign, right? Or like a word, like something's wrong. Something is wrong. Either we need to discuss something, either something is out of sorts, so if we start to look at it like feedback, right? This is feedback. Instead of it, this is some horrible thing. And, I'm showing emotion. Oh my gosh, I can't. Okay, let's stop. I'm feeling myself getting emotional about this. So why? Something that tells me something here. There's something to discuss. If we start using it as feedback, then I think that could help as well. And I think that's what I've started to do. And it has kind of helped me rein some of that in, is using it as feedback to tell me there's something that needs to be worked on. There's something that needs to be discussed. There's something that needs to be addressed. And so if our people, if we as leaders, like you were saying, in terms of our reaction, if we look at it as a fact-finding mission, right? If someone's getting upset, okay, you know what? You're telling me, instead of addressing the emotion and, why are you crying? Okay, your emotions are telling me that there's something we need to talk about. There's some, or maybe not. Maybe you just need a moment away, like you're saying, like that's personal, but it's telling me something. Instead of looking at it like, this is something we don't want. This is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity for connection. It's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to say, wait, if you're getting upset about this, I'm missing something.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? Like it's opening that up, because whether it's you and I who are getting emotional and are ready to cry, or someone that we're in a meeting with, it's the importance of being like, okay, what did I miss? What did I miss? And opening up that conversation of what did I miss that created this emotion in you, this feeling in you, this reaction in you.
If leaders looked at it that way, think about how transformative that could be.
Right.
If all leaders, when they see that emotion, instead of going, letting it make them feel uncomfortable, trying to ignore it, trying to not address it, if they said, hey, okay, your response, instead of, your emotions or whatever, your response or whatever word you want to use that feels comfortable at the moment, but it's telling you there's something we need to dive into further.
Right.
Use it as feedback, biofeedback, literally what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not as something that we want to fear, or, we want to ignore. We want to like, okay, do you need a minute? If we use it and as, hey, this is telling me something. What is this telling me? I think that could be transformative.
Right. And what created that reaction? Was it the situation? Was it the verbiage used? I've been in meetings where, leaders are very almost, and not at the not where I am now. We did not start off with our disclaimer.
That's our, we're not talking about our current job. 30 years. Both of us have 30 years in our career. So
lots of companies in that. I've been in those meetings where people have been screamed at or whatever, and it's prompted, a running out crying from the meeting, and then it turns into a whole other thing, and it creates so much chaos instead of opening up the conversation. Now that's been probably 10, 15 years ago that happened. So it's, things I feel have changed to some extent after that. But I do think that it's important that it, number one, has to start at the top to me.
Correct.
We have to train leaders to be more open about other people's and feelings is not even just the right word, because I think people think sometimes that feelings comes across very weak.
Right.
And related to a female more than a male a lot of times. But I think that we just have to be open and recognize how things affect other people, because, and I mean, this is something that I tried to work with my kids growing up in, is that you don't know what's going on when they're not with you. You have no idea what's happening in their life. You have no idea what's happening outside of work, school for them.
Right.
You cannot assume that what's happening in your life, and you and I have had this conversation, you cannot assume that what's happening in their life is what they're affected by what you're saying.
Right.
There could be lots of things going on, and something you said just triggered something in their head.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that you should ignore it.
Right. I mean, I love the idea of thinking of it as feedback, as biofeedback. You know, I remember when we were younger, you used to go, I don't know, I mean, if you did, but I'm pretty sure you probably did. It was every mall, they had they were called the biorhythm, where you put your quarter in, you drop the quarter in, and it would tell you kind of what your biofeedback
was. Right. Yes.
And it would tell you, oh, here's how you're feeling today. And I used to always
what your little level is.
Yes. I always used to love to do that, because it was so accurate, because it's basically by your temperature, your biofeedback, right? And so if we look, and biofeedback is what it is. It is not, it is a reflection of what is going on at the time. It is not, some people could probably control it, but in general, unless you're really trying, you're not controlling your biofeedback. It just is what it is. And so if we look at emotions more as biofeedback, or in meetings, like, this is what it is, there's something causing it, right? And whether you want to say, by you, the proverbial you, whether the person wants to say, it's not something I want to talk about right now, okay, fine, as long as you can, right? If, or even if it has to do with work or doesn't, it's telling me that there's something that we need to pause. Do you just, do you need a minute? Do you need to feel safe to share something? Is there something that is bothering you? Is there something that is, are you frustrated? And making it, like you said, from leadership, that safe space. And I think taking our emotion out of it, where we're not running shy from it. We're not running away from it. We're not threatened by it or disturbed by it. And we just say, hey, is there something that we need to, dive into? And look at it as it doesn't have its own weight. It is a mirror. It is a mirror of something.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that we get lost in our society as a whole, doesn't matter what sex you are, or any of those sort of things, what gender you are, it is, we put emotions in a different box than everything else. So if someone walked into a meeting and they brought something and sat down and someone broke out in a rash all over their body, they would never walk in that room again with whatever it was that created that rash.
Right.
That person was allergic to. They would never do that again.
Right.
But we don't think about it in those terms when we're talking about people's emotions and their mental well-being. And sometimes that's really all it needs to be, is to step back and say, okay, that's affected you. Let's talk about it.
Right.
And we put those in a box, like everybody's just supposed to be able to put them away when they walk in a room. And you can't do that. You're not human.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure I can compartmentalize with the best of them. I'm very good at compartmentalizing. I understand that. So I do come across probably more on the cold side a lot of times. It's not intentional. It's just how I've learned to deal with things. And it's that's just how my brain works. However, I understand that not everybody's that way. So I think we need more leaders that, even if you're built that way, doesn't mean everybody is, nor should they be. I don't want everybody to be like me. I want to work with a team that has strengths where I don't. And that's the whole key to me.
Absolutely. I don't think it's, it's not the emotion, it's how you handle it, right? It's not the fact that you have the emotion, it's what you do with it. Do you let it get the best of you, or do you let it get the best out of you?
Right. Absolutely. And that's a great way to put it.
And I think, if that's the lens that we're looking at it through, I think, then we stand a chance, right? Because how I said a few minutes ago, I was like, I don't know if it's ever going to get better, because we're just all different and we perceive each other so differently. But if we start to do that, if we start to use it as feedback, and we start to use our emotion to make our environment better, our team better, their emotions to make our team better, our work better, what we produce better, instead of letting our emotions control us, we control, or at least we use our emotions in a controlled manner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I, just, when things pop in my head when we're having these conversations, and I wonder, we talk about all the time about how the reality is we need to train leadership in companies. There needs to be training. We have, we have drug-free zone trainings. We have sexual harassment trainings. Why don't we have trainings for this?
Right.
Why aren't we expecting leaders in companies to be human and understand that they're working with humans? To me, that should be right in line with the other things, is that we teach leaders to do this. And I think that that's what corporations really, if they're really interested in making a great workplace, those are the sort of things they should be doing for their teams, for their companies, and just having these trainings where it's an open conversation and nobody's in trouble for what they say, but understanding it to be able to, we do personality tests to see if somebody will fit well in a company. We do personality tests or cognitive tests. We do all of these tests to see if people fit into a company. But once they fit into a company, we don't necessarily, not all companies, and there probably are some out there that do it, but those companies don't take it further as they grow and make sure in leadership that they're going through these and they are doing these trainings to be able to handle people better and situations better. Because let's face it, with our teams, we know there are times where you're a counselor for these people.
For sure.
And that they're not all people can handle that sort of thing, are good at it, or even want to do it.
Yep. I mean, it's so funny because I know we haven't talked a lot about, what I do for the Navy, but that's exactly, and by the Navy, I mean the shipbuilding. So, the NAVSEA is who I do leadership training for. And we call it it's human synergistics. So it's very human centered. And it's about how we impact as managers. It's all based around this management impact report, how we impact the behavior and results of others based on the way we think, act, and behave. And so that's the whole premise of it. And so in some ways, I feel like, that the Navy is heading, and again, by Navy, I mean NAVSEA, is head and shoulders above, other organizations for addressing this. But in general, it makes me kind of like sad for other organizations and businesses.
Right.
Like you said, I see so much growth when we go through these, it starts with an assessment and then we go through emotional intelligence, for example, is at the core of every single aspect of management impact. And yet it is the area where companies, like you were saying, companies, organizations don't spend time training people. And emotional intelligence can be learned. It's not like it's not like something that where, like you can't, if you're not a very emotional person, you can't learn to be. Emotional intelligence means that you understand the emotions of others, how it impacts the dynamic of their work and the organization through their team, through their interactions with you, et cetera. So emotional intelligence is really just understanding it from an intelligent perspective and making sure that we understand that goes into everything. It goes into the quality of work. It goes into the interaction with others. It goes into the culture of the organization. It goes into the environment. It goes into everything. And there have been so many studies proving that leaders who are or practice emotional intelligence are going to always have higher results as an organization, even though it's a soft skill, theoretically. It's a soft skill. I don't think it is. I think it's actually one of the hard skills, but it's deemed a soft skill. It still directly correlates to the success of an organization, even like a manufacturer, right?
Absolutely.
It's been proven that if you have emotionally intelligent leaders, you're going to produce better widgets. And that's so people don't understand, right? And that's probably, maybe we need to interject that into our next show, is doing one on emotional intelligence, because it's so freaking important.
I agree with you. And I that would be a perfect one to do. And I think the importance of that, it comes back to multiple things we've talked about in the past too, in many of ours, is that people want to succeed under someone who wants them to succeed and who fosters them to succeed. And that emotional intelligence is genuinely, that's what you need for people to succeed. They need to understand that you're supporting them. And that's how we've got to do it.
Remember Branson's quote, as you grow in your leadership, you're not supposed to take care of the work anymore. You're supposed to take care of the people who do the work, and they'll take care of the work. And so it's so misunderstood too. I think emotional intelligence in general is people really, I think if you ask somebody, do you know what emotional intelligence is? Most people go, sure. What is it? They're not going to be able to tell you.
They're not going to tell you. Right. Yeah.
So
they don't know.
They don't know.
And it's understanding how it plays into your everyday. And interesting enough, how it plays into being a leader, being a parent, being a friend. I mean, genuinely, it rolls over into so many things that it really is. It's a core skill for anybody, in my opinion, in a leadership role.
Agreed. People cannot do their best work if they do not feel emotionally supported. It's just
absolutely,
it's vital. So yeah, I think let's plan on that. Let's do that.
I think that's great. I would love to do that.
All right. Yes. Well, I think that's time. We're right on time. So So
all right, guys. Well, if you like this episode, hit subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. We're on Spotify as well, so listen to us over there.
Yep. And we try to do twice a week. We don't always manage that, but we'll always be on once a week. But if you've got a work story or a question or an idea of a topic, if you've heard us talking and it spurs some idea where you're like, hey, I wish I would talk about this, or more people need to learn about that, feel free to, DM us, drop us the line. There's the ability to send a message through the YouTube channel. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thanks for hanging out with the Business Chicks, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Bye, Michelle.
Bye.